is a sight for my soul.
Hey friends, today we're going to investigate the prevalence of bear chain attacks in Hesitant Prospect. What is a bear chain attack? This refers to bears attacking immediately after their initial attack. Sometimes up to 3 times, and 3 times usually meant the end of the file. Sometimes this was unpreventable. Other times it occurred because the player treated in place. Bandaged, disinfected, gathered items, they stuck around instead of running like hell. The best practice when I was a new player was to run. Treat a ways down the road, come back for items later if worth it at all, but run. However, this chain attack you just witnessed, it didn't actually happen. I had to annoy the bear into attacking me again. This was a subsequent bear attack, not a chain bear attack. Do chain bear attacks still occur? Is treating in place now viable? Let's investigate. We'll also examine the moose. My first trial was in Coastal Highway, Bear Creek Campground. This is a solid place to get caught off guard if you're not listening for the bear crows and bear noises. But the same thing happened. The bear went the opposite way. No problem. On my second trial, this happened. I managed to direct the bear into a wall until he disengaged. So, bear attack prevented? That's not what we're here to do. So I tried Desolation Point. This time, the bear helpfully came to me. I got mauled up against the side of the Riken. Well, eventually. Unlike my previous trials, while I was waiting to treat in place, the bear came right back at me. Okay, not right back at me. Wait for it.
Gotta stop that blood loss.
As any old school player who has tried to bait a wolf in a cave can tell you, predatory wildlife act a lot differently when your back is literally against a wall. Actually, let's demonstrate that for everyone, because you may not know that if you join the game after episode 3. We'll come back to the Riken bear in a moment. Here's a primer on the old baiting system using 2016's Resolute Outfitters Survival Update. The baiting mechanic would change a little over time, but it was generally the same idea until it was broken and then removed in episode 3. Baiting was a method of luring a wolf closer so that you could take a shot without risking their charge. It was the primary strategy for engaging wolves, so everyone would carry a couple of small pieces of cooked meat in their inventory. We're talking 0.01 kilograms, folks. You drop a decoy and then wait for the wolf to be baited. There were 3 ways to know when the wolf was baited. First, it would stop snarling. Second, you could check by moving around a little like so and seeing whether it was focused on you or on the bait. Third, the wolf would do this little jogging animation. Once he was focused on the bait, he was baited and you could take your shot. Hell yeah, still got it. Here's what that looked like in 2017's Rugged Sentinel, aka the Moose update. It should look a little more familiar. Hey, level 5 archery, we can bait while crouched. Let's do it. But if the wolf got too close to you while walking towards the bait, they'd ignore the bait and charge you. Similarly, if you were in a cave, up against a wall, even a tree, they'd walk right past the bait and you were in for a fight. But he doesn't have to see you drop the bait for it to work as bait. Still true, by the way. Any meat, gut, or fish you've dropped since your last load screen will count as bait. If you've ever been in, say, Timberwolf Mountain and had a wolf bug you while you were harvesting a bear, break off and take some of the nearby bear meat instead, well, that's why. The wolf self-baited. Note the old school wolf struggle system. You didn't get to pick your weapon, it defaulted based on a specific order. It was a whole mess. Bear could also be baited. Still can, by the way, if you really want to. Not to help with fighting them, but just in the pursuit. Which I guess here in 2021, Hinterland would argue is how they intended decoys to work. Rather pointless if you ask me. Functionally, it serves no end that simply running away wouldn't accomplish. But like wolves, bear would ignore bait if you were backed into a corner or in a cave. And this is how we learn that wildlife are more aggressive in those circumstances. By the by, you can't help but notice the bear crows. They were much louder in Resolute Outfitter. The crows would get louder still when the bear was alerted to you, and even louder when it charged. Bear crows still exist, but they made the bear louder and it can be easy to miss them. Older players can still pick them out because we know what we're listening for based on the old system. Oh, and if you're wondering if bait would stop a charging bear from attacking, no, not in 2016 anyway. But that is your primer. Hopefully it helped. Now let's return to the Riken bear, already in progress. By way of reminder, we got chain attack standing in front of the Riken. More accurately, in front of a rock in front of the Riken. On theory that our position had induced the chain attack, I stood and waited for a third attack.
Feeling faint.
It never happened. Then I tried Hibernia. While I already recalled being attacked while treating on sight to be much more common than it appeared to be now, I believe that I could provoke a chain attack in an area with lots of clutter on the ground, where a bear might get stuck or glitch. That may ultimately be true and worth further experimentation, but it didn't happen here. And while I question the generalizability for our pursuits for extra credit, I took a bear attack on Hibernia's stairs. Did you know that the bear can get up here? I don't know if it would be lured up here on scent alone, but it can definitely find its way up here once provoked. Forewarned is forearmed. At any rate, nothing came of this either. The bear went on its way and we were able to treat right where we were. Then I tried the moose. Not the same since you aren't bleeding out and you don't drop items. I didn't know that, by the way. But people have a tendency to treat right on sight. I did 3 trials. In the first 2, this being the first of the 2, I moved forward just enough to provoke the moose, then moved back, but not far enough back to evade the moose's ire. The idea being that in a normal encounter, folks would probably move back to allow for an extra shot and to be a fair representation of distance from the moose post-injury. Well, that and it's just habit, but that first explanation sounded more scientific, right? After standing up, I stayed mostly in place, but looked on the ground to verify that you don't drop anything. Well, I didn't anyway. Then I bandaged and took painkillers to treat the broken ribs. Moose with his back to me the entire time. The moose had allowed me to treat in place, so that was that, but I still wanted a little revenge. For the second trial, let's do a side-by-side. The second trial is on the right, and the sound is from the second trial. The moose is farther out this trial, and my movements account for it, with me yawing slightly to the right to try and catch the moose's attention without moving directly inward. Once I have his attention, I move back to about the same spot as on the first, and I let him come to me. Well, that's one way to put it. The side-by-side becomes especially handy here after the attack. Initially, the moose is at the same distance in both trials as we get up. But the moose's back is turned on the first, and he's walking away. In the second trial, the moose sticks around, facing us while he grazes. My movements are roughly the same for both. Then the second trial moose stomps and charges. And we handle that. Also, never before have my actions coincidentally timed up so well with Will's monologue. There's your food, buddy. In one trial, he had walked away. We treated on sight. In the other, he didn't walk away and stared right at us. In the second, had we not looked around, we might have had just enough time to treat and run away before he charged. Oh, and in the third trial, I just full-on rushed the moose.
So cold. Just let me lay down for a bit.
He attacked, as you'd expect, but he didn't move very far away. I'm not sure why. But even if we hadn't treated right there, I'm not sure we would have had time to clear his charge radius with broken ribs. So I guess the takeaway here is don't charge a moose unless you mean it. The only thing that surprised me about the moose trials is that I was able to treat on sight the first time. Oh, and don't take that first trial as instruction to just stand up and treat after a moose attack. When you get attacked by a moose, you get up and you run. If you can't, you either take a desperate shot or you try to run, but you don't treat your ribs until you're clear. I told you all that the purpose of this video is to investigate the prevalence of bear chain attacks and hesitant prospect. I demonstrated it, albeit in a slightly misleading way. More seasoned players are going to recall this phenomenon with all due infamy. It was a straight-up file killer. But if you're a newer player, you may have had the good fortune never to have seen it at all outside of, say, a hunted challenge or episode 2. But there was a time when posts like these were very common. I got attacked a second or third time by the same bear while trying to bandage and disinfect. What happened? The answer was always the same. They can attack multiple times. You need to run away from the bear and the site. You can't always avoid it, but you have to try. Reading in place was a common newer player mistake. Addressing it was an idea I'd had for a video, so I wrote a guide. No joke, here it is. That acronym, FEAR, totally unintended, but it works. The guide broke down the 4 stages of the bear attack. 30-second cutscene, 10 seconds of unconsciousness, 8 seconds of regaining consciousness before you can move, and the moment you can move, into 4 steps for maximizing your survival after a bear attack. By the way, why freak out? Because in my experience, panic or failing to account for it was as lethal as failing to relocate. They aren't mutually exclusive, of course, but panic is a natural reaction to being hit by a bear in an immersive survival game. You can account for it, you can plan for it. If you can plan for it, you can mitigate it. But when I couldn't reproduce the behavior, I sought to figure out why. And when I managed to reproduce it, but only once, I became convinced that it was now a rarer occurrence, but still possible, and something you should err on the side of caution against. I still feel that way, by the way. I did 80 additional trials, torturing every non-15-year file in my arsenal. We've watched a couple of bear attacks this video, so here's something a little different. Then I tortured one file over 40 times. You get the idea. Over those 140 plus trials, not once more did I experience a chain bear attack. On the other hand, my last survival file bear attack was in 2019, Steadfast Ranger, leading into the 5-year finale. Maybe things had changed. If you're running away to prevent a chain attack and no chain attack occurs, you're never going to know that anything has changed and that running away is unnecessary. Instead, you're going to take that non-occurrence of a chain bear attack as evidence that your strategy works. Maybe this is now a part of TLD's Hall of Infamy, phenomena that we have eagerly and happily left to TLD's past and will blissfully forget about over time. When was the last time you heard of anyone incurring a sprain from climbing up or down a rope? Whoa. How about getting trapped under ice? That was a good one. It was fun to mess around with in side files, but if you experienced it in a main file, you were in a lot of trouble, because hitting those textures underneath came with a complimentary sprain, which meant a forced save. Nobody backed up their files in those days. Regrettably, few do now. Experience is a dear teacher. Those were clearly bugs. Maybe this is a bug as well. Unintended consequences of glitched pathing or a buggy script. I only experienced it once throughout over 100 trials. If you take my results as generalizable, a big if, I'll grant you, you could safely treat on site 99 bear attacks out of 100. But I'll tell you that 1 out of 100 is one more than I'll willingly accept without a fighting chance. Also, that latter post I shared, the Steam one, it was from earlier this year. Anecdotal, Fair enough. But my experience wasn't. That's good enough for me. So this is one bassist will not be treating in place. I'll see you all around the bend. Cheers.